Well, after losing two of his close allies, Jesse Custer is slowly starting to break, but this episode reminds us that even though he may be breaking, he will never be fully broken. Hey guys, Cameron for Preacher, Season 1, Episode 8, El Valero, and I was definitely looking forward to this episode. Last week's episode, kind of low-key, not a ton of stuff going on, besides that really great dinner scene, especially the ending. I was really looking forward to this episode because of that ending and because of the way things were set up last week. I was really looking forward to seeing how all that stuff was going to play out, and damn was this a good episode. I mean, there was so much great stuff, mainly all going on with Jesse's subconscious. A big part of this episode is getting into Jesse's head, which I think we've done before, but I think this is probably the most psychological episode we've had of Preacher yet. There are a lot of things this episode makes you think is happening, and it doesn't do it all. This was a very unpredictable episode. I really did love that, and just like the entire season, where we're going in this season, your guess is better than mine, because I don't really know where we're headed in these last two episodes, but let's just get into this episode. There's a lot to talk about. This episode was pretty much full-on war, and I really did love it. But the one thing I loved about it is that even though we've had such a good villain in, Quincannon, which that's how you pronounce it, it's not Quincannon, it's Quincannon, as good as a villain as he's been, he becomes even a better villain in this episode when they humanize him. We actually see a flashback in the past where there's this full ski lift with his family inside, climbing a mountainside, and they note that Quincannon isn't there because he was too busy with work, and the wire breaks and the lift falls, and he remembers this, and then remembers the night he called John, Jesse's father, to his office, and John finds Quincannon covered in blood after carving up a cow in his family. He can't tell the difference between his daughter's entrails and those of a cow, and he demands that John denounce God in front of the congregation of the church. And John leaves, but Jesse sees Quincannon with the entrails in his hand before they go, and basically we knew that definitely there was something more going on there. We finally see more of what's going on with that. I thought it was just a really good way to humanize his character. I really did love what was going on. I thought overall that was all just really interesting, and knowing why he really has lost his faith, really, why he doesn't believe in God, mainly because his family died and everything, and how God didn't save them, so that's really why he doesn't believe in God. It really does humanize him, and I think they did a really good job, Jackie Earle Haley's been killing it all season, which I'm surprised about because he was really bad in that Nightmare on Elm Street remake, and I really haven't seen him given a great performance, but he really was great here. I think he really was fantastic, and I've really been loving all the work they've been doing with him in this season. He really has been a pretty great character. So the Meatmen then charge into the church. There's a brawl and gunfire right away. We just start off with a huge brawl, and the Meatmen then go back outside, but Jesse has their weapons. He's still begging God, we see, to bring Eugene back. He wants to make sure that Eugene does come back, and he will do anything in his power to make sure that Eugene is back, because he just can't accept the fact that he killed someone like Eugene. Eugene was so innocent. Nothing really happened. He promises to he even says he's never going to use Genesis again if he does, but then the unexpected happens in this next scene. Now, the second that Jesse did in fact send Eugene to hell, I didn't think Eugene was actually going to go to hell. I thought that there'd be a way to bring him back somehow, because Eugene's a big character, and I heard even in the comics he is the biggest character, one of the biggest characters in there, and I just didn't think they'd kill him off. I didn't think it happened this early, because we see Jesse, he literally pulls Eugene out of the soil of the ground beneath the spot on the floor that Jesse tore up, and Jesse fetches Eugene some water and a straw. Jesse says when he heard Genesis's voice call him, he started digging his way back to Earth from hell, and it's just this really great scene. You can see Jesse's finally realizing, what's going on, and it seems like Jesse's kind of getting his life together. Now that Eugene's back, things might get better for him, and in the morning outside, Quincannon is laying out his dream for the new meat packing plant they'll build on the land where Jesse's church standeth. They finally managed to take him from Jesse, because as we know, that's what this whole episode's about. It's about, Quincannon. Well, it's also about Jesse's subconscious, but a big part of it is Quincannon wanting to take hold of Jesse's church and turn into a meat packing business is what he wants to do, because he just feels he needs expansion and things like that, and I think it's just the perfect example of how Jesse's, powers have really backfired on him. That this is really, again, remember what Deblanc and Fiore said, that this is not a good thing. This is a bad thing, and Jesse needs to realize that. And it's really starting to backfire, first with Eugene and now with Quincannon. And Jesse tells Eugene that Eugene was right about Jesse abusing his power. Jesse says he's thinking about giving up his power, and Eugene brings up Fiore and Deblanc. And, Here's the thing, Jesse never told Eugene about them, and we then realize that Eugene's not, and in this brilliant move, the way this was done, I absolutely love this, because Eugene talks about how, what's going on and everything, and Eugene doesn't really know if Jesse forgives him or whatever, and he talks about Fiore and Deblanc. The thing is, Jesse never told Eugene about them, and we realize that Eugene isn't really there. Jesse is imagining that he's there, and that's something I thought was extremely well done. I really did love that, and I just thought that was just such a genius choice. I absolutely love that. The other thing I love this episode is that, for right now, like I said, I don't think that this is going to be the case for the entire show, but Cassidy is gone right now. He's MIA. I mean, I don't really think that he killed himself. I think that definitely he's going to get regenerated somehow, but for right now, he's gone, and I like seeing Jesse without a sidekick. It's just kind of cool to see him on his own, and eventually he does have someone, but for right now, he's kind of all on his own. It's probably the most interesting part of this episode, seeing him all alone, seeing him realizing that Eugene is back, and kind of coming to terms realizing that Eugene is not back, and that he's actually hallucinating, and that he's really losing it. It just is really interesting. I love the way that was done. I thought it was a really brilliant move, and definitely one of the best parts of this episode is him coming to that realization that he's not really there, and that really he's just hallucinating, and that really, he's just thinking that because he wants Eugene to be back. He doesn't want to admit what he did. He feels terrible what he did. He feels he really regrets what he did. If he couldn't have done it, he wouldn't have done it, and I feel that's really what Jesse's going through. He's going through something where he really regrets what he's doing. He regrets that he started all this in the first place, and really all of the things he's committed within Genesis are really starting to catch up to him in this episode, and you definitely do see that. So, the only stuff I didn't like in this episode was with Tulip, because at this point, now, I've heard people say that they really don't Tulip, that she's on, and they don't know what the hell they're doing with her. And honestly, now, look, I have denounced this theory many times. I've said, oh, no, Tulip is going to do a lot more. She's there to be the person who's going to get Jesse back on his feet, realize true purpose. In this episode, yeah, I could agree to an extent, because what she does in this episode is really not that extraordinary. It's very just, I don't really care what was going on here. She takes in this dog named Brewski, and I just didn't care. I mean, I get that Tulip, she doesn't really have anyone right now. She's trying to talk to someone, but what happened with the relationship with Emily? Her and Emily really seem to strike up some sort of friendship, and the fact they don't talk in this episode, it just felt really weird that Tulip's talking to this dog and not Emily. I just thought that was very strange. But Miles visits Emily's home in the morning, tells her about Quincannon tearing down the church, and he explains that the best between Jesse and Quincannon was a legally binding verbal agreement, and that's all it was. It was just a verbal agreement. There wasn't any sort of battle there, and Miles tries to be helpful, but only annoys Emily, but she does ask him to take her kids to school, and it's a very interesting scene the way that that's done. So Donnie leads the next charge of the church, and I like that Donnie isn't on Jesse's side. Now, that's understandable, obviously. Donnie was the first person that Jesse really wronged, and Jesse fires out on them for the church tower, then tosses a Molotov cocktail at the dozer. The meat men, still standing, retreat back to Quincannon, and Rude arrives on the scene. Jesse speaks to the speaker, tells them to bring him the agents, and he doesn't have much of an army right now. He really doesn't, and second he said that, I knew he was talking about Fiore and Deblanc, because obviously they're really the only ones he has left. I mean, think about it. Eugene is in hell. He's not with him right now. Cassidy's seemingly committed suicide, and Tulip's clearly gone to hiding. So he's really all on his own right now, and he really doesn't know what to do. And that's probably my favorite aspect of this episode, is Jesse struggling to find allies, and really just being down to the end of his rope, and realizing that he really doesn't have many left. And he goes to Fiore and Deblanc. They ride with their trunk, but they can't enter until Jesse tells them with the voice of Genesis. And outside, which I thought was a really cool twist the way it was done, even though they don't initially want him to have this power, they can't enter until he says it with Genesis. And outside, families are setting up little picnics while the meat men play hacky sack, and it's very low-key what's going on here. Root asks Quincannon about the conflict over the church. Root says the church is holy ground, but Quincannon insists that it's nothing but a pile of oil and dirt. It doesn't really mean much of anything to him, that he just feels it's just a church. And again, it's mainly because of what happened to his family. I think that's really why Quincannon doesn't really believe in any of this stuff. He feels it's all bullshit, he feels none of it is true, and he feels none of it really applies to him. All the stuff that Jesse talks about, Quincannon can't relate to. Quincannon didn't have a really good family like Jesse did. Quincannon didn't have the foundation that Jesse had, and he doesn't really have the passion that Jesse has either. The only passion he seems to have is seemingly destroying Jesse. That's what he wants to do. He wants to destroy him, and I think we definitely do see that here. But at the same time, you very much care for this man because of what he's been through and because of his past, and I thought that's just something they did really well. I think they took what could be a very cliche villain and turned him to a very well thought out three-dimensional character. Deblanc and Fiore to help him get Eugene back, and they say it will be hard, but agrees as long as they get Genesis back first. As we know, they want Genesis, and I like seeing Jesse desperate. He actually wants, he's not resilient here. He's not like, no, this is mine. He's no longer that stubborn Jesse that we've been seeing. He actually is starting to want to give up Genesis. He doesn't really want it anymore, and you know that that's not going to happen because then the show would be over, but he actually kind of wants to give it up here because of all the shit he's done. And outside, Emmeline tells Miles that Jesse is only defending his home, and Miles says that Jesse is a criminal and that what Quincannon will build over the church will save the community and is worth the sacrifice. He feels that the best thing to do is to go along with this, that he feels that Quincannon is right. Quincannon has convinced this entire army that what Jesse's doing is the work of the devil. And I've said it before, Jesse's not a good man or a bad man, but he's not really a good man. I mean, even though he's not a bad man either, I wouldn't say he really classifies as good or bad. He's a very human character. He does think, he's gone too far. He's gone way too far. He's become very power hungry, and he's starting to lose some of that hunger for power. He doesn't have the thirst for power. He doesn't feel as, ready to use Genesis. Now that he knows the extent of what Genesis can do, he really no longer wants to use it. And then we get a scene of Tulip playing fetch with Brewski, and I just thought this really just dragged things down. I get that they were trying to show that Tulip's by herself, but again, she had Emily this entire episode. Why didn't she just go to her? Why didn't she go to someone? I mean, it just felt weird that she's bonding with this dog. It kind of came out of nowhere. It just seemed like they just gave it to Tulip to give her something to do. And Deblanc and Fiore then tell Jesse about the other hosts who explode when Genesis inhabited them, and this makes Jesse wonder why he hasn't exploded yet. And this I love, because finally they are explaining the scene in the first episode. If you guys remember, in the very first episode, and I didn't even realize this till they said this, I didn't even realize this thing about just now, but when Fiore and Deblanc are talking about it is exactly what went down in the first scene of this entire show. If you remember, the first scene of the show was this preacher preaching like Africa or something, and the church just exploded. Only it wasn't the church, it was the preacher that exploded. That's what exploded. He exploded, and anyone that's corrupted with this power explodes. So now it makes sense why we saw this, because basically that was our warning. That is a warning that is what may be ahead for Jesse, that might be how this show ends, that Jesse might explode. And Deblanc and Fiore aren't interested in his questions. They have him lie down so they can sing Genesis out of him, and they're basically just ready to take it out, because they know, obviously, that he doesn't want it, and he's ready to take it out as well. Now he knows that he's going to explode, he's more ready than ever to take it down. I definitely thought that was interesting. I really did love seeing that, and I just thought that was really well done. I really love seeing that, and again, just that very subtle use of that first scene and recalling back to that very first scene of the entire show. It is a lot to really think about, but again, Preacher's a show where you have to focus on every little detail, and everything eventually comes together, just like the cowboy story is eventually going to tie into this. I don't know how, but it's going to, and again, I don't think it's going to till the 10th episode. Since they didn't reference the first scene to the 8th episode, I think that is going to tie into the finale. I think that's really what's going to happen there, but I thought that was very well done, and again, I just love seeing this side of Jesse where he's ready to take it out rather than, holding it back, rather than embracing it. He no longer wants to embrace it, he wants to conceal it and get it out at any cost and do anything he can to get it out. So the crowd outside of the church is really growing. I mean, there's a huge crowd outside, and Quincannon says that they're waiting for diplomacy a few minutes longer before they start setting a night assault into motion. Donnie notices his wife in the crowd, walks to his car, opens the trunk. He closes his head inside the trunk, fires his gun, and you think that he committed suicide. I'm like, did he just kill himself? And I really would have been pissed if they killed off Donnie, because if they would have done that, then I wouldn't have given a shit about his character. But then I realized he's billed as a main character, and there's no way they're just going to kill him off. It's just like Cassidy killing himself, or Jesse picturing that Eugene is back. I don't think this show is dumb enough to do something that cliche. The show is not The Walking Dead. It's already proved that it doesn't go in that Walking Dead shock value type territory. Preacher is not that kind of show. Preacher's a show that focuses on a narrative and does anything it does to make said narrative as compelling as possible. So I really was thinking, okay, Donnie killed himself here. We'll get into that in a second, though, because where they go is a lot more interesting. So Deblanc and Fiore try to coax Genesis out of Jesse, but Jesse's actually resisting, and I think it's just because Jesse's it's become such a part of him that he doesn't want to leave it. It's kind of like, the best way I think to compare it is if you have something that you've been doing all your life. Like, these YouTube videos for me. I've been doing YouTube for 5 years, and if someone told me to quit YouTube, maybe I'd think about it, but I don't know if I'd ever really go through with it. This has become such a big part of my life, and, what I do every day, I just can't stop doing it. It's also like theater for me. I could never stop doing theater. There are so many things that I'm involved with in my life that I just couldn't get rid of, and Genesis, I think, that's what's in Jesse. That is Jesse's, I'm not going to say passion, but that is what his purpose is. His purpose right now is to use Genesis, and it's helped him with the church, and I feel like he deep down feels that he still can use it to, reinvigorate the church and fix the reputation and get people back in the good graces of God. And after some further convincing, Genesis leaves Jesse, goes back into its coffee tin, and he doesn't have Genesis anymore. It's gone. It's gone right now. Now, I don't think it's going to be gone forever, but it's gone right now. And Deblanc and Fiore try to leave without getting Eugene back. Jesse argues with them because, again, that's not why they're here. They're there to get Genesis out of him. And Deblanc and Fiore then try to leave without getting Eugene back. Jesse argues with them until Genesis bursts out of the tin, possesses Jesse once more, and this time destroying the tin entirely as it leaves. And Fiore and Deblanc says it's time for the other options to leave, and they leave, because, again, Jesse didn't all give them what they want. Jesse can no longer see the illusion of Eugene, which is very interesting, because throughout the entire episode, he was seeing Eugene. He was picturing Eugene was there, and now that he has it back, he can't see Eugene more. Almost as if he started over. Almost as if all the sins he's committed, he's not committed anymore. They're kind of gone. And they're not gone, though. Eugene is still in hell. Donnie is, Donnie is still the way he is, and Quincannon is the way he is. So they're not completely gone. They're still there. They're on the table, and I like that. I thought the show was going to do the thing where once the power was gone, everything would come back, but that's not all what happened. Jesse still committed these sins. He still needs to face that, and there's really nothing he can do about it at this point. So Jesse is then falling asleep as the Meatmen begin their one-night assault, but Jesse still manages to fend them off. Even though he's falling asleep, he actually fends them off, and Donnie sneaks in through the back, points a gun at Jesse, and he's not dead. I knew that Donnie was not dead. He actually puts Jesse at gunpoint. Jesse uses Genesis to command Donnie to put the gun down, but Donnie can't hear Jesse. He actually can't hear him at this point, and this is just, oh my god, this is genius. This is amazing writing. I mean, I could never have thought they were going this direction with Donnie, but this really is genius. Jesse tells Donnie to do it, but Donnie just knocks Jesse out, and we realize Donnie's deaf. Donnie didn't kill himself. He shot himself in the ear so he can't hear anymore, which honestly is a genius twist, and it makes perfect sense as to why he did this, because if he can't hear Jesse tell him what to do, then it does the effect on him, and he's no longer deathly terrified that something's going to happen to him or that this power is going to come back after him, but now he has nothing to fear because he shot himself in the ear, and it's just so much more interesting what's going on there. Jesse literally tells Donnie to just shoot him because he's ready to die at this point. He has Genesis back, he wanted it gone, he's ready to die, but Donnie just knocks Jesse out, and I think he did that because he knew he couldn't go through with actually killing Jesse. He just couldn't do that anymore, and even though he's hated Jesse all this time, he could not see himself doing that. I thought overall it was very interesting. Also, I forgot to say, we did get this really good scene with Sheriff Root before, where we see that he talks about how he genuinely did love Eugene. Even though Eugene did everything that he did, he genuinely did love his son, and I thought it was a very sweet scene. I really did like the way that was done, and definitely one of my favorite parts of this episode was seeing Root say that he genuinely did love Eugene, and that, he really was there for him all the time. And Quincannon and the Meatmen are inside the church, and Quincannon preaches about how the Alamo was lost before handing the documents over for Jesse to sign. Jesse doesn't understand what happened with Quincannon or how he became this way, but Quincannon says he's serving the god of meat, the god of what is tangible, and I thought that was interesting the way he said that, because he says, to him, God is just, it's not something that he believes, it's just not plausible to him. He's someone that looks for facts and things that are logical, and God just doesn't fit into that narrative. Because really, when you think about God, it's not something that's about logic. God's never been about logic. What God's about is belief. It's about, can you actually believe that there's a guy out there that's done all these things? Can you actually believe that all the stories you hear as a kid are true? I mean, clearly for Quincannon, he doesn't believe any of that stuff. And I'm not going to say he's an atheist necessarily, but he definitely doesn't believe in God. And Jesse begins signing the documents, but then asks Quincannon for one more Sunday. Basically says, look, I will sign these documents if you go to one more Sunday. Next Sunday, instead of bringing the town to God, he plans to bring God to town. And even though he is at the end of his rope, basically ready to die at gunpoint, he still wants to serve God. That is still his main thing. And they'll ask God their questions, and if they don't like his answers, then he will denounce God right then and there. And if they don't like what he's gonna say, then he's just gonna say God's not real, because God is not helping him. And he's kind of, I think, starting to lose faith in God, which honestly is really interesting, especially where we've seen Jesse all this time. I think honestly starting to lose some faith in God, and I thought overall it was definitely very interesting. So Tulip then gives Brewski a good pet. She then curses Jesse, leads Brewski in the back of the house. She gives Brewski a hug, lets him through a door where he's devoured, and I am assuming, I'm not thinking this, I'm just kind of thinking here in theory, that Cassidy's the one that ate the dog. I mean, Cassidy, as we know, is a vampire. He'll eat anything, and I'm assuming that he's the one that ate Brewski. But again, what was the purpose here? I just don't really know. I mean, yeah, she was obviously really mad at Jesse and a huff and everything, but was it to show that she has no allies? Because clearly she does. I mean, I would not say that she's the one alone. If anything, Jesse's the one alone. It's definitely not Tulip, and I don't really know why they wanted to show this. It just didn't really make much sense to me. It just seemed like they want to give Tulip some random dude. Other than that, I loved the episode, but that was just really weird. Ruth then takes Jesse in, but the crowd cheers for Jesse as he goes, basically treating him as a hero. They feel that he was the bigger person. He didn't kill Quincannon. He's going to have this one last church meeting and see if God really does exist. And then at the end of the episode, very strange, an alarm goes off until a man presses a button to relieve the pressure. He then sits down, reads the paper. Who the hell this man is, we don't know. Why he's here, what's going on there, I don't really know what this is all about. But he reads this paper, and that's how the episode ends. So I don't know who he is or what's going on with him. This episode ended like 5 times. Like, it kept cutting to black and coming back, cutting to black, coming back, which I thought was kind of a cool choice the way they did that. But the last scene, what the hell does it mean? I have no idea. But that's where this episode ends. Let's talk about this episode overall, because really there was a lot to talk about here. So really, aside from that whole Tulip subplot, I thought this was right up there with episode 6 for me. I really did love this episode overall, and really provided a lot of interesting directions for the show moving forward. I mean, especially Jesse, we're seeing he's at the end of his rope. This is a man that is really starting to, I think, lose his faith, really. And if that's really the direction we're headed, where Jesse ends up losing his faith and realizes that all the work he's done has been meaningless, I think is overall really interesting. Now, it is kind of like what Outcast has been trying to do, but I think for Jesse it's a lot more literal. I mean, think of it, his entire goal, I mean, he's had so many things that he could be doing, and his entire goal has been to fix this church and turn this church around and get people to come every Sunday. That has been his goal. He has served this entire season has been that goal, but now he's starting to lose that. Now that he knows what he's done to Eugene, my question is there any way to possibly bring Eugene back? Is there a way to, fix what happened to everything he's done? Is there a way to fix Donnie? I mean, Donnie's now deaf, which is so interesting, and I could never have seen that happening, but it makes his character so much more interesting. I don't really know what happens to him or not. If Donnie ends up getting on his side, if Donnie ends up turning away, I mean, Donnie's deaf either way, and I don't know if he's definitely not getting a hearing aid. He's deaf because he doesn't want to have to deal with Jesse anymore. He doesn't want to have to deal with that. I think overall that's very interesting what's going on with that. Is Jesse going to be able to prove to Quincannon that God exists? Because I don't think it's just Jesse doing this to prove to Quincannon. I think he's doing this to see if God's really still on his side. Because after all the shit he's been through, after all the things that Jesse's done, God seems to not really be on his side right now. I mean, after everything he's gone through between losing Eugene and Cassidy committing suicide and him getting Genesis back when he's tried to avoid it, I mean, God really doesn't seem to be on Jesse's side right now. And I think he's really wondering, is God really on my side? Is God really someone I can trust right now? And is there really a God out there? And I think overall, it's just a really interesting move. I'm looking forward to seeing what the show does with it, and I think it's definitely one of the most interesting parts moving forward into this season. I can't wait to see the way that this goes for the next 2 episodes. I love that we finally got an explanation on the first scene of the show, because for weeks I have been trying to figure out what the hell it all means, and we still don't know where the cowboy fits into it. But judging from that last scene, I feel like we're about to. I feel like very slowly we are going to find out how the cowboy fits into it, what that character is all about, what's going to happen there. I'm looking forward to seeing Graham McTavish on TV again. Hopefully he's not cut off in this show too, because of course we have an Outlander. Again, that's a spoil for Outlander, but as far as Tulip, I think that Cassidy is somewhat alive. I don't know if he was the one that devoured Brewski. I'm just saying, I think he was. I don't know if he was. I'm going to assume that he was. I like that scene with Root where he talked about how he really did love Eugene, and after even all the scuffles they had and everything, you know, every relationship has a few tiffs. I've said this before, every relationship has a few tiffs, and I think Root's and, you know, Eugene's is very unique. You know, Root really, a lot of the hate he gets, and he gets ridiculed a lot for having a son like Eugene. He has a very bad rep for it, and Eugene, we know why everyone hates Eugene, because of what he did, because of the fact that he shot his girlfriend, and then he tried to kill himself. Now we really know what's going on, and why he, you know, feels that. I mean, we know that since last week, but we know that now, we know what's going on there, and we know, obviously, why Root feels that way, and I think overall, that's really interesting, what's going to happen there, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that's all going to turn out. If there was a way of bringing Eugene back, I don't really know. Fiore and Deblanc, I mean, they're not done. They're not done. They're main characters, and they're not done here. So really, what are they going to do? I don't really know. If they're going to take a strike at Jesse. Is that man God? I mean, is he the one that wants Genesis? I don't really know. I'm assuming that man has something to do with Genesis. I don't know, but something is definitely going on there. I don't really know who that man is. We'll have to see him next week. Also, Jesse's subconscious. That's one other thing I really want to touch upon, is what's really going on there. What does that all mean? You know, him seeing Eugene. What is this really all about? I mean, obviously it is him, you know, remembering Eugene, but is there a way to bring him back that he's not thinking about? I think that's overall very interesting. I just want to talk about Tulip for a second, because like I said, even though the whole thing I think might be going on with Cassidy, you know, Cassidy might be alive, I don't really know if they know what to do with Tulip. At this point, I just don't think they really know what to do with her. I think they're really trying to figure out her purpose, and I think for a while it was to be the one to, you know, let Jesse know who he really is. Then it seemed like she was going to be a love interest in this love triangle with Cassidy and Jesse, and maybe have a friendship with Emily on the side. And now, I don't know what they're going to do with her. I honestly have no idea where they're going with her character. I think she's the one character. Now look, Ruth Negga is great. Every scene she kills in, she's a great actress. And she's so great in this role and so perfectly casted that they could give her the most blandest scene, you know, such a bland scene and just dull dialogue, and she'd kill it off perfectly, because she just does it so well. But I just really don't know where they're going with her at this point. I really hope that we get an explanation very soon, because at this point I'm just kind of worried as to where she's going, and I just am kind of not disliking her by any means. I still really do like her character. I'm just really trying to figure out where this is all going, because honestly at this point I have no idea. But overall, guys, such a great episode. Pretty much just, I loved what was going on. I thought there were so many interesting things going on here. A lot of interesting directions for the show. I can't wait to see where this goes moving forward. A lot of really great stuff going on here. And let me know what you guys thought. I'd love your thoughts on it. We have 2 episodes left, guys, which I can't believe, but this show is just, it's getting better and better as it goes on, and I'm really loving it. I'm really loving the second half, honestly, more than the first half. I really did love the first half, but the second half really is kicking things into high gear, and especially if things are the way that this episode was, I really could see next 2 episodes being, you know, as good as beating episode 6. I really could see that happening. But let me know what you guys thought. I'd love your thoughts on it. We'll see you guys in my next show, which will finally be for the series premiere the night of. I know you guys want me to review it. I haven't reviewed it, but I will review the next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.